Welcome to ATD-TV and our final episode for 2018. In this episode, we'll hear some of ATD's key findings in 2018 research, including the 2018 State of the Industry Report. Our In This Corner segment will focus on managing the learning function. We'll learn more about creating a culture of learning and what's in store for TechKnowledge 2019. Let's get started. Every year, ATD releases several research reports. In 2018, topics included needs assessment, adaptive learning, change enablement, and succession planning, to name a few. Maria Ho, Associate Director for Research, shares some thoughts about the year in research.
So our research shows that we are on the right track, but there's still a lot of work to be done. For example, everyone knows that upskilling and reskilling are kind of on top of the news. They're important areas, and most of the talent development professionals we surveyed acknowledged its importance. However, only about half of companies have some sort of upskilling program, some sort of reskilling program, or both. So that's an area that we see that there's a lot of opportunity to improve and to grow. Another thing we saw is that over 90% of companies experienced some sort of major change recently, but only about 1 in 5 companies says that they're good at addressing change and dealing with it. So making sure companies are ready for change and making sure employees are empowered to deal with change is another area where we see a huge amount of opportunity. So one of them is just the importance of managers. We've done a lot of research that have identified the skills of successful managers, but what our research this year really showed us is the importance of those managers to all different areas in the organization. For example, manager involvement is critical if you want to build a coaching culture in your organization. It's also critical to building a mentoring culture. Another thing we've seen is that for programs such as upskilling and reskilling to work, managers need to buy in, they need to coach their employees, and they also need to make sure that employees have time available for learning. So manager involvement is one huge theme that we keep seeing over and over again. So the 2018 report looks at data from 2017. And some of the things we found are that, on average, an organization spends $1,296 per employee on direct learning expenditure, and that's up from the previous year. Another thing we found was that the number of learning hours the average employee gets per year is slightly over 34, and so that's held steady since the previous year. As you can look at 34 hours as slightly over 4 days. And a couple other things we looked at what types of learning content are being emphasized. And the top area is actually managerial and supervisory content, which is a positive thing if you look at the importance of managers again. And we also see some more importance being placed on interpersonal skills, such as teamwork, communication, working with others. And again, that's another area where we've seen in a lot of our research, employees really need to develop their skills. So that's another positive. We also look at how learning is being delivered. And one thing we found was that still slightly over half of hours are actually being delivered by a live trainer or facilitator in front of a live classroom. So even though technology is really changing, obviously, the way we deliver learning, it's changing, the tools available to learners, the live classroom really isn't going away. And it's still kind of seen as not replaceable for certain types of training.
In This Corner features a great conversation about managing the learning function.
I have some great SMEs who are going to be talking about managing the learning function. Marlo Thomas-Watson, President and Chief Engagement Officer at the Marlo Company, and our very own Gabby Amatuna, Project Manager of Healthcare here at ATD. All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having the opportunity.
Absolutely. So I'm going to actually start with you, Gabby. As we look at managing the learning function, one of the big things that we see or hear that in the L&D community is align it to the business, making sure that the training that you do push out does tie to the overarching business goal. Would love if you can talk to us or give some insight on aligning your business to the training.
I would say that there are many factors. However, there are some that are critical, and those are, first of all, the communication and the 360 methodology. I think it is so important to have or to receive feedback from all the parties involved, and that means the leaders, the trainers, and the trainees. Then secondly, to have like a leader-centric approach, having all the leaders, together, putting all their needs, on the table, and make sure that all of them are in symphony. And that has been called, like the high C-suite symphony. Then third, hyperconnectivity. It is so important and nowadays, and with this, globalization, for them to be connected in all the ways they can, and use, or considering, to use this talent management platform where you can incorporate different kind of technologies or learning strategies. And they can share, and they can have like social learning. They can have different types, of learning, approaches. And then lastly, to make sure that you consider cost efficiency and cost effectiveness.
One thing that kind of shot out at me was this C-suite symphony.
Yes,
I love how you describe that, because that's exactly, everyone has to be kind of on the same playing field. And so I'm going to turn to you, Marlo, about that.
Sure.
Because we know we can't get any of this going unless we have that buy-in from our stakeholders.
Absolutely.
Would love to hear some insight that you have to share with us in that regard.
It depends on how exhaustive your budget or how extensive your budget is. But you can have lunch and learn opportunities where you do mock sessions of the trainings that you're going to provide, or surveys that are implemented within whatever the lunchroom or meeting area to ask people certain questions, what objections they might see, what their needs are. You want to be deliberate about and intentional about the questions that you ask so that you can get the right data. It's not just, willy-nillying it, if you will, with questions, but you want to be able to capture as much information as possible. Also, if there's a way to simultaneously gather data from like the C-suite as well as people who are actually on the ground, the boots on the ground, if you will, because they tend to have a totally different perspective. They're closer to the problem, right? Yeah. And I just am a firm believer that people closer to the problem really have more of the solution if given the platform to say. So you want them to be able to feel that they have input. At the end of the day, it's just in the collection of that data and doing that research is making people feel that they are heard, even if you choose not to implement whatever it is that they have suggested. When you feel heard, you're much more likely to participate.
I want you to talk through why it's really important to work with some of these other lines of businesses to actually manage the learning function effectively.
I think it's very important for trainers, to communicate with other lines of business, because it's a better way for them to understand how that organization operates and how each department operates and what are the specific needs. Sure. And as a trainer, you can provide, and working in different environments, you should be able to provide them or feed them or nourish them with a different perspective that can provide key information once you need to develop or implement a new, learning plan.
So that was really good that you said that, Gabby. I want to dig deeper into, working with lines of businesses, and particularly we see IT and HR as a really critical partner to trainers in the workplace. Would love for you to talk to why that relationship needs to be intact.
You're absolutely correct. HR and IT are essential, and probably two of the most essential. Human resources, specifically because you're managing performance, right? You need to make sure that when you're developing trainings that you're developing trainings that are going to develop the skills that are needed for the staff, because their performance is going to be managed by that. Human resources should also be a strategic partner, in terms of the organizational mission, and so ensuring that the organization is getting the proper return on the investment that they're making into training and into developing the talent. IT is critical, in my opinion, because they provide the flexibility that's needed for the delivery of training. If you're delivering a training in person, and if there's the capability to be able to record that so that it then becomes a webinar or a different way to provide the training, to making sure that the organization has the proper bandwidth that's needed for the different types of trainings to be delivered. So in my opinion, they are two of the most essential partners that are needed for the training function.
Gabby, I want to turn to you as we look at learner credibility. And I know we talked a little bit about the C-suite and gathering data and making sure that, you know, all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. But, you know, there's still that credibility factor that, you know, one also looks at, you know, in terms of the person pushing out the training. Do you have some thoughts there around that?
I would say to consider two things. The first one is developing the user experience. That is so critical. And then the second one, it will be to develop relevant and consistent content. So those are the most important things that you know, to be successful when you launch a new learning program.
Well, thank you so much. I know we could talk about this at length.
Right?
I'm kind of sad it's ending, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We often hear the term culture of learning, and research shows there are marketplace benefits for organizations that have them. But what does it mean in a practical sense?
Let's talk a little bit about how you've seen this play out in the real world in learning cultures that you've been a part of.
Imagine you worked for a company where you got up in the morning, you, on your commute, listened to an audio book on something relevant to your job. You got to your office and you turned on your laptop and there was a social feed with information you needed for the day. And later on you talked to your boss about development needs you might have and how to meet those development needs. You talked about what you're working on and what you can learn from what you're working on that would help your career. Imagine you had a knowledge database you could go to, that you had mentors and formal training programs that you could access when you needed it. Imagine if that was your workplace. That's what a learning culture is. That's what it looks like in an organization where it's not just about the training courses that are available. It's not about signing up for anything. It's about learning all day long through different mechanisms, things that help you do your job better, things that are supported by your organization, things that are supported through the talent development function.
So it's easy for us as talent development professionals to see that value of a learning culture, but our research shows that most organizations are not drinking that Kool-Aid. What are some steps that they can take in order to get over that initial hump?
The initial hump, I would say, is that, you know, we say learning culture or culture of learning, and in fact, we're competing with a lot of organizations that want their culture in the organization, right? So we have a culture of performance, a culture of innovation, and if we make this an initiative like that, it tends to get people fatigued. You know, they have had these initiatives before. They get a little skeptical. It's like flavor of the month. So I would think that the first thing we don't want to do is have it be an initiative. Rather, I think talent development folks should be building processes and procedures and policies and working with other talent management functions to say, how do we sort of integrate and build in learning in everything that we do and everything that employees do, and how do we build that so people don't necessarily see it as an initiative, but just the way we do business.
It's really got to be embedded in the culture.
It really does, and it almost doesn't matter if we call it that or not. It's just the way that things get done.
What are some of the best practices in this area that you've seen in organizations that are doing this well?
Making sure that senior leadership understands what we're talking about, what our vision is for a culture of learning, because many times, and I think this is probably why a lot of organizations aren't there yet, is the senior leadership looks at the talent development folks as the training folks, right? We're the ones who sponsor courses, maybe we have e-learning, it's all about formal classroom or online classes. And so we really have to change that paradigm, change that mindset so that these leaders understand we're not talking about training anymore, a culture of training, we're talking about a culture of learning, and sort of like get them to understand that example I just gave of how employees come to work and they learn throughout the day through different mechanisms. So I think that's kind of a first step, that we have to really have a very clear vision about what we're talking about and making sure that our senior managers are on board with that, will support it, and will model it as well.
What are some of the pitfalls or things that we need to watch out for along the way?
A couple of things that are challenges. I think one thing is we might get senior management on board and then we forget about the rest of the management folks. So really, they are the people who make or break this, right? So if senior management is bought in and your frontline leaders or your middle managers are too busy to really do their part in all of this, I think that can be a real pitfall because it will die. It will die on the vine, as we know. I think so getting them skilled, holding them accountable to do their part, to have these developmental conversations with people, to have performance feedback, all of the things that we've been saying for years, but really to hold people accountable who are in management roles to do what we're expecting them to do in terms of creating a learning culture. So I think that can be one pitfall. Another pitfall is sometimes if talent development is not part of a broader talent management process, we lose out on some things that are happening in other functions. So for example, we have a critical role to play, I believe, in the planning process of the organization. So workforce planning is so important for us to understand what do we have in terms of talent, what do we need, where's the business going, and how do we get those skills? And if we're going to develop those skills, what are the competencies that people need? What do we provide as a talent development folks for those people to really develop into the kind of workforce the organization needs to meet its business objectives? And I think lastly, a pitfall is that we don't offer a lot of evidence to our management that this really has an impact, that learning really has an impact on the organization's performance. We're still not doing enough in terms of data analytics to show that they really do have an impact. We believe it, but we don't show it very much. So I think those are three pitfalls that we can run into.
That demonstration of the value of what we're doing as learning and talent development professionals is absolutely key, and it's a foundational piece that we talk about a lot. Barbara, thank you so much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. My pleasure.
Learning technology is advancing at lightning speed, and staying ahead of the curve can be challenging. ATD TechKnowledge is your trusted source for how to put leading trends into practice. Whether you're tech curious and just getting started, tech savvy and looking for the latest innovations, or tech forward and exploring new strategies, TechKnowledge 2019 has it all. 7 content tracks cover everything from e-learning to tech strategy for leaders. You'll be sure to walk away with new skills and ideas to implement immediately. 3 amazing keynotes will inspire and entertain you. Dean Kamen, inventor of the Segway personal transportation system, and iBot, a uniquely designed powered wheelchair that walks over curbs and stairs. Shaylee Chopra, the founder of SheThePeople.tv, India's biggest platform focused on real women with real stories. And Ben Nempton, New York Times best-selling author and star of MTV's The Buried Life. TechKnowledge 2019 marks the event's 20th anniversary, and we're taking it up a notch. Experience the hub right at the center of the expo floor, where you can try augmented and virtual reality solutions, experience TED-like presentations, and participate in unparalleled networking opportunities designed to help you connect on a deeper level. All of this and more make ATD TechKnowledge the learning technology event to attend. Join us in sunny West Palm Beach, February 6th through the 8th, and get ready for the future of learning. As 2018 comes to a close, all of us at ATD want to thank each member of our global community. You've made 2018 a year to remember. We wish you a wonderful 2019, and thanks for helping create a world that works better.